This is the Momentum Podcast.
Wanted to jump in this morning and record this video that's going to become one of our podcasts on expectations and disappointment. You know, I think that entrepreneurial personality types, entrepreneurs like me, and a lot of the entrepreneurs I work with, we have a unique relationship with disappointment. And I've been working with a coach. Her name's Kylie Ryan. She's absolutely extraordinary, has completely changed my life. And over the course of the last week, we've been unpacking some of where this disappointment comes from for me and understanding why I think I've made peace with disappointment. And I've even started to expect not started to. I think for most of my life, I've expected disappointment. Now, here's why I'm sharing this with you. I want to share what I've learned about myself with you, but I also want to share how as an adult and as an entrepreneur, I've gotten to the point where I don't have a lot of missed expectations. I don't have a lot of disappointment.
I'm Alex Sharfin, and this is the Momentum Podcast, made for empire builders, game changers, trailblazers, shot takers, record breakers, world makers, and creators of all kinds. Those among us who can't turn it off and don't know why anyone would want to. We challenge complacency, destroy apathy, and we are obsessed with creating momentum so we can roll over bureaucracy and make our greatest contribution. Sure, we pay attention to their rules, but only so that we can bend them, break them, then rewrite them around our own will. We don't accept our destiny, we define it. We don't understand defeat because you only lose if you stop, and we don't know how. While the rest of the world strives for average and clings desperately to the status quo, we are the minority, the few, who are willing to hallucinate there could be a better future. And instead of just daydreaming of what could be, we endure the vulnerability and exposure it takes to make it real. We are the evolutionary hunters, clearly the most important people in the world, because entrepreneurs are the only source of consistent, positive human evolution, and we always will be.
First, let me share with you where I think my having made peace with disappointment comes from. You know, I actually feel like as a child, I learned how to trust in disappointment. See if this resonates. Maybe it won't, but it might bring up something for you as to why disappointment has become part of your life. It's in your business. It's in, you know, how often are you disappointed? How often are you disappointed with relationships? Here's the genesis of this for me. In doing a lot of personal work and a lot of inner child work and a lot of coaching and getting advice and reflection from other people, here's what I've learned about my life, is that when I was a child, I had a lot of disappointment because I was very frustrated. I had a hard time as a kid. Can you relate to having a difficult time as a adolescent, as a child? I didn't feel like I got along with other kids very well. I didn't get along with teachers very well. And as a result, I would go home and I would talk to my mom and I would say, you know, I'd tell my mom, like, hey, mom, this isn't working very well. I'm not doing well. You know, I'm not getting along with kids. And my mom's way of handling it, I was the oldest child. My mom was an extraordinary human being. In fact, yesterday would have been her 75th birthday. She passed away a couple years ago. It's just left this massive void for me. But when my mom was younger, her way of encouraging or helping was to try and like look towards the future and try and tell me what might happen next. And so I would say, Mom, I'm really having a hard time in school. And she would say, well, Alex, you've only been there for 2 weeks. Things are going to get better. You know, it's going to start looking up. And I would come home and say, Mom, the other kids aren't very nice to me. Well, you know, Alex, you've got a whole semester left to work through those issues. And so my mom was always future pacing, always pointing to the future. And as a kid, I don't think she meant it. I know she didn't mean to do this. I know my mom would have never done this on purpose. But what happened was, because she was always telling me things would get better, and I didn't really feel like they did, I started to understand that life was just about disappointment. And I trusted in disappointment. Actually, when I was like 9 or 10 years old, I can remember now like thinking, okay, well, I'm not going to be disappointed anymore. I don't want any more expectations. I'm not going to have birthday parties. I don't want to have any of those expectations. So I was the kid from a very young age who didn't want birthday parties, who didn't want surprises. I didn't want expectations. I didn't want to be disappointed. I didn't really love holidays. All of those things made it so that I'm one of those, or I became a human being who, rather than have big expectations, I would rather just stay neutral rather than be disappointed. And when I got into business, this absolutely translated. You know, when I got into business, here's what would often happen is I would expect to be disappointed. So when a team member disappointed me or a client disappointed me or I had something that didn't work out and I felt disappointed, I would just say like, okay, this is how it's supposed to be. This is just part of doing big things. This is just part of making things happen like I'm trying to make things happen. And what I realized in working with Kylie, and what I've realized also as an adult, is that we should not make peace with disappointment. In fact, when we are disappointed, we should ask ourselves, what role did we play in that disappointment? Now, that might be hard to like put all together, but let me share this with you. Here's what I've realized working as an adult with entrepreneurs. I think a lot of us are accustomed to disappointment. In fact, a lot of us, when something happens with a person that we're working with or a team that we're working with, or something goes wrong, we just kind of blame it on ourselves. We expect it. It's like, oh, we did that. And here's the reality, because so many of us as entrepreneurial personality types have been in this place where we had expectations, we were disappointed, they weren't met, we fail to create clear expectations with the people around us. And so we are constantly disappointed. And I watch this in myself. I have this pattern. And I watch it in the people, and my friends who are entrepreneurs, and I watch it in the people that we coach. You know, especially with those who are in relationships. You know, I often hear like, you know, I'm just so frustrated with my spouse or my partner or my significant other, and it's because they're doing this, this, and this. And I'll just ask a simple question, like, have you set clear expectations that bothers you? Have you explained to them why this is frustrating? Have you told them what alternatives they could have? And let me break those down. Often I'll say, well, have you told them this bothers you? Yes, every time it happens, I get all angry. Okay, well, have you explained to them why? Well, I've told them I'm angry. I don't know if I've explained why. Have you given them alternatives? Have you told them what you would like it to look like? Well, no. So you've expressed disappointment. You haven't really said why, and you haven't given an alternative. And so if we express disappointment and we are not clear why, and we don't give an alternative, we are going to be consistently disappointed. And that happens often with us in our relationships as entrepreneurs. And the other reason that we are so frustrated and disappointed so often as entrepreneurs is we don't create clear expectations of what we want people to do. You know, entrepreneurs almost have like this this like personality flaw where if we're really excited about a vision and we can see it clearly, and we've done that magic trick that we do, you know what I'm talking about, as entrepreneurs, we get up in the morning, we travel into the future, create a new reality, come back to the present, insist it becomes real. When we do that, it's so real for us, we actually expect the people around us to kind of feel it and see it. And oftentimes when I'm able to slow a client down or a friend of mine down and we talk through it, here's what we find. They're disappointed that something happened where they've never set a clear expectation. And oftentimes, there's a pattern there from childhood that makes it so that we don't realize we can set a clear expectation. There's a pattern there from childhood or from our lives that makes us expect disappointment so much that we don't even consider the fact, and this is a fact, that we can walk our way out of it. Here's how we can walk our way out of having this feeling of disappointment. Well, first, we create clear expectations with the people around us. We create clear expectations with our spouse. My wife and I, Katie, we sit down, we align, we talk about what we're doing in the day, we set up plans for the month, we agree on what we're pursuing as goals for the year so that we have alignment as to where we're going, and neither one of us is disappointed because we've had a meeting of the minds. With our team members, we do the same thing. We sit down with each individual team member and they know three things. They know the outcomes they're responsible for. This is what you're doing. They know the scoreboards that show whether they're doing it well or not, and we're moving forward or not. And they know what they're accountable to. They know what their role is. And so with team members, when we create expectations, we stop being so disappointed. We stop feeling that rage, that fear, that frustration, that anxiety, whatever disappointment does for you. And then we do this with our business in general. It's not just with my spouse. It's not just with the team. It's with the entire business. And here's how you eliminate disappointment in a business over time. You start creating clear strategic plans that you and your team can predictably execute. You know, I use this word predictable. We want our business to become predictable. And what often entrepreneurs hear is like, oh, I don't want predictability. I want excitement. I want spontaneity. I want fun. Well, you know what? In a business, when we become predictable, the business grows predictably and it explodes. And oftentimes, when entrepreneurs hear predictable, they hear slow. Well, we don't help businesses grow slowly. We actually help businesses explode through creating massive predictability. Because here's what happens. If you and your team get together and you set up a strategic plan and you go accomplish that strategic plan together, you actually create the muscles of not being disappointed and achieving as a team. And so the more clear that strategic plan is, the more clearly and more consistently your team can achieve it, the more you create this entirely new feeling on the team of achievement, not of disappointment, of moving forward, of clearly communicating what you want and getting what you want. And so many of us don't do it because we don't even think that this is part of what we need to do. And so in your relationships, I often hear entrepreneurs, and we have a lot of married entrepreneurs in our program, and I'll say, what is going on with you and your spouse? Because they'll say, we have this issue, and then we'll start talking about it, and they'll say, well, they always do this thing, and it makes me frustrated, and I don't know what to do. And I'll say, have you clearly communicated this? Have you told them what's going on? Have you told them the alternative? Have you told them what you'd like them to do? And oftentimes the answer is no. Why? Because we're used to being disappointed. We don't realize we can elevate above the disappointment, set a new expectation, and create an entirely new reality for ourselves consistently. It's interesting. This is something that I've worked on for most of my life, on eliminating disappointment around me and making it so that I don't have expectations where I can be let down. And in so many ways, especially with working with Kylie this year, I've realized that in some ways, I've actually lowered my expectations so I won't be disappointed. And so this reality of we can create a strategic plan, we can have a clear conversation, we can set expectations for someone, and once they understand it, we will eliminate that disappointment. It's kind of one of those things where you have to trust that if I do this, this will happen. But if you're willing to do that, here's what I believe happens, and here's what I know has happened for me. As I have stopped expecting at disappointment and started setting expectations, the people around me have gotten a lot more talented, and they frustrate me way less, and I actually have a lot more love for them and a lot more excitement that they're in my life. As I have stopped just being disappointed and I've shared expectations with people on my team, I've actually grown to really enjoy running the company way more, and I'm way more excited with the successes that my team gets and the things that we're moving forward and the momentum that we're creating. And as I've gotten to this place where I am no longer living in this state of disappointment, I actually feel a lot more excited on a daily basis. And here's what's happened for me. When I am out of that state of disappointment and I'm in that place of achievement, anything feels possible and the momentum is massive. And so I know that if you apply what I've shared here in this podcast, if you're willing to share with people clearly and congruently, if you're willing to have a written communicated strategic plan that everyone on your team understands, and you're willing to stop living in this place of disappointment and give people clear expectations, it's hard. I want you to know, when you start setting expectations, it feels vulnerable. When you start setting expectations and telling people what you really want, it feels difficult. When you start setting expectations and telling people what you really expect, it feels like you're centering yourself or being self-centered. All of those things we can get over by consistently setting expectations, seeing them be met or being close to met, and coaching and helping, and then getting into a place of achievement and expecting achievement, expecting momentum, expecting that you will move forward. It's life-changing for us as entrepreneurs. Thanks for being here with me today. If this meant something to you, please share it or tag somebody who needs to hear it. And if you are ready to start growing your business and you want a process, a system, a virtual operating system where we can show you how to run a distributed company around the world, grow like crazy, and understand what every member of your team is doing, eliminate disappointment, create that expectation, and start achieving, reach out to us. Go to billionairecode.com. It's billionairecode.com. The Billionaire Code is a 9-level framework that goes from startup all the way to a $100 million business, and it shows you exactly what to expect at each level, so you will be able to understand exactly where you are, what you should anticipate next, and what you should have already covered. It is a game changer for entrepreneurs. So go to billionairecode.com, download the Billionaire Code Matrix, the ebook called Billionaire Code Decoded, and if you'd like, you can set up a call with a member of my team, and we'll tell you how we help entrepreneurs grow like crazy without feeling massive disappointment, get into the passenger seat of their company, and drive growth without having to do it all themselves. Go to billionairecode.com. I can't wait to see you there, and thanks for being here with me today.